I forgot to tell y'all that my husband did get me a record player for Christmas, and I am prepared to make it my entire personality. Hello and welcome to Queen Things. I am your host, KJ Miller, founder, lecturer, and content creator. And today on the show, I am diving into y'all's comments about the last episode, which I'm so excited to do. It's been a while since I've been able to dive into the comment section, but y'all had so many thoughts. Oh, Lord. The video I posted on TikTok has, I think at this point, 60,000 views. And for a podcast clip, usually when I post podcast clips to my personal TikTok, I might get 5, 10, 15,000 views. So to be at 60,000 means y'all had thoughts very specifically on what was actually kind of a throwaway segment, not throwaway, but like ad-libbed, wasn't in my outline when I spoke about the Beyoncé Renaissance World Tour film versus Eras. And it's just a thought I had while I was recording because I was talking about the Eras doc and ended up obviously thinking about Beyonce's documentary about her tour. And when I compared them and what I compared, y'all had thoughts. So we're going to dive into that. Let's see how long it takes me. Who knows? Could be 5 minutes, could be 50 minutes. We're going to start there. Then I do want to spend a little bit of time on Ashley Tisdale's article in The Cut about breaking up with her mom group. I'm intrigued by it because I don't know. There are some sentiments she shared that I can relate to. And a lot of people have been talking about it on the internet, including our girl, Erica Manganelli. She made a viral video on it. And then Ashley Tisdale's people released a statement referring to the internet sleuths. And I think they were talking directly about Erica. So you gotta love that. So we're going to get into that. And then there are a couple other things we might touch on. Critics' Choice Awards, maybe. I don't know. Thinking about it. Then we'll get into some Black news and then we'll get up out of here. Now, before we dive into the meat, I do have a couple of announcements. First and foremost, I've decided that for the Patreon, I'd like to try and tell you before I drop a bonus episode what's going to be on that bonus episode and give a little bit of forethought to it. So this month, I'm actually going to be listening to Olivia Dean, listening to her album and reviewing her album. I am excited to have a new pop girl to potentially get into, but I will tell you, I don't know anything about Olivia Dean, okay? Not one singular thing. The only thing I know is come be the man I need. And I don't know the words. Okay, that's how little I know. I know that refrain because I've heard it on TikTok so many times, but some creators that I respect have had very good things to say about her and her album. So I'm like, let me see. Let me see if I can make room in my Beyonce and Taylor sized heart for another pop girl. And bonus, she's a person of color, and no shade at all to all the white pop girls, because there are a lot of y'all. I feel like y'all have been dominating, and I love that for you. Okay, truly, no shade at all. But am I excited to have a little more color in the mix? Yes, I am. So I'm going to be listening to her album and reviewing it, and that'll be on the Patreon, or you can get your bonus episodes on Substack. You can get them on Apple. I'm pretty sure you can get them on Spotify. I've made it available in a lot of places. That'll be January's bonus episode. Second announcement. I've decided I'd like to do a survey because I'd like to know more about you. You know so much about me, but what do I know about you? I know a little bit. I do have analytics in YouTube and in TikTok. So what I can tell you is that 90+% of you are women, and that 80+% of you are between the ages of 25 and 44. That's not that much information to work with. That is not that much information to work with. So I'd like a little bit more. I'd like to know, where are you? First of all, what if one day I decide to go on tour? Hello, a Queen Things tour? Would you live for it? Where would I go? Am I going to Idaho? Let's pray not. No shade to anybody in Idaho. Shout out to my Idaho listeners. Let's hope that that's not my most populous place. I'd love to go to, frankly, Chicago. Chicago is my favorite city. That is not my city I'm in, which is Columbus, Ohio. I love being home. But my favorite city in America, Chicago, hands down. So let's hope we have a lot of you out there if we ever want to do a tour. I'm in New York a lot. Always love an excuse to go to Broadway. That'd be amazing to find out that a bunch of y'all are in New York. But really, wherever you are, I'd like to be there at some point in the future as the pod continues to grow. So I'd like to know where you are. I'd like to know a little bit about your professions. And most importantly, I'd like to know what you would like to hear from me. What are the topics? Someone actually left me a very good topic idea that I am going to dig into. One of the comments that we'll dig into wanted to sort of do a deep dive into Scott Swift. Is that his name? Taylor's dad? Scott Swift versus Matthew Knowles, and how both of these women, how their fathers shaped their careers, but also how they've sort of like had to come out from underneath their fathers. And I know much more about this as it relates to Matthew Knowles and the lore around Matthew Knowles than I do around Scott Swift. Because to be clear, I'm not even sure his name is Scott. I hope I'm right. Apologies if I'm wrong. But the point is, I haven't even thought to do that. So that is something I want to dig into. Maybe that'll be a bonus episode. But anyway, what do you want to hear from me? I would like to know. So that's another reason I want to do the survey. The link will be in the show notes. Whatever platform you get this podcast on, take a few minutes if you don't mind and fill it out so I can learn a little bit about you. And those are my announcements. Let's get into these comments, y'all. Okay, so in case you didn't listen to last week's episode, we spoke at length about the Eras Tour docuseries, and one of the things I mentioned was that compared to some of the moments we got in the Renaissance World Tour documentary, and I would say just other documentaries generally Beyoncé has given us, I found the Eras Tour docuseries, which I loved, genuinely loved, to be a lot more frictionless, or to have a lot less friction, I would say. We didn't get these moments of tumult that we often get with Beyoncé. And I raised one event in particular where Beyoncé wanted a particular camera lens and was being told repeatedly that it wasn't available until she had to go on Google her damn self and find it. And we didn't really see that with Taylor, right? So go back and watch it if you want the full context. Basically, the question I asked was, did we not see that friction in End of an Era because it didn't happen? Like, it just straight up didn't happen. And Taylor's people, her crew, the people working for her, don't push back. It's either a yes, or maybe they go give that no to someone else, but they're not saying it to Taylor directly. Like, is it that she is not experiencing that friction, or was it simply not captured, right? Or was it a matter of, the Renaissance film started at the very beginning of Renaissance Tour versus End of an Era literally was at the end of Eras Tour? Like, there are a lot of things that could have shaped it, but I sort of asked that question because I believe Beyoncé and Taylor do move differently through the world for a lot of reasons, one of which being race, right? Beyoncé is a Black woman, and so Black women are often discounted. And we have heard that from many wealthy, accomplished, successful Black women. We've heard it from Oprah. We've heard it from Serena, who nearly died on delivering her baby. We've heard it from many successful Black women. So we know this is a thing that happens. And I am curious, how these things look, how touring might look different for Beyoncé and Taylor for a whole host of reasons, race being one of them, right? Okay, so that was the question. Well, you all had thoughts. And so I want to get into those thoughts. I will say, for a lot of you raised all of the different reasons you think Taylor did not experience the same amount of friction that Beyoncé did that don't potentially have anything to do with race. And I'm going to read some of them. I am going to say, and I feel like I can say this to you because you're part of my audience. I feel like we have a thing. You know what I mean? We've got a thing going on here. So I'm going to say it with love. You may be right, but I would challenge anybody. If someone says this could be related to race, I would challenge you to not immediately think, but what if it isn't? And the reason I would challenge you is because sometimes these things are at play that you might not be experiencing. That doesn't mean they're not happening. And it can come across as trying to belittle someone's experience. I'm not saying that's what's happening in any of these comments, because I did invite the question. I invited the question and you provided your answer. You provided your hypothesis. So I'm not shaming anyone for that. I'm simply challenging all of us to do the work of sometimes challenging our own assumptions and assuming that, because I think it may have gone down this way, it probably did go down that way. That's something I have to do when I'm thinking about how a gay person, an LGBT, a member of the LGBT community might be moving through the world. And if they're saying they're noticing something that I'm not, challenging my bias around it, right? So that's just a thought. Take it or leave it, but let's get to some of your comments. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna go from YouTube first. You know, my YouTubers, I like to give you a little bit of preferential treatment, only because it takes more work to like watch a full podcast on YouTube than it does to watch a 3-minute clip on TikTok. But we'll get to both. All right, so this first comment I'm reading comes from someone named Sammy92. Sammy says, I do not discount race because I am sure that race does play a role in this. I am unsure of how long Beyoncé has been with her singers, crew, and band. A very big reason I think that one of the reasons the Eras Tour went as smoothly as it did is because Taylor seems to keep every last person she can from tour to tour. She may have had more camera moments like that in past tours, but has now been on so many that people know what she expects and how she needs things done. I think it's a good lesson for up and coming artists. Treat people around you well, and they will keep coming back. Okay. A few thoughts here. Number one, some variation of this comment was made dozens and dozens of times across all of the platforms. This is a comment that people kept coming back to. Taylor keeps her team for a long time. She made that very clear in the docuseries that a lot of the people she's worked with, she has worked with for years and years, many, many tours. So I take that point, and it makes a lot of sense to me that if you keep bringing the same people back, there will be certain areas that will have less friction because people know how you work. They know what it is you like to see. They know how high your expectations are, so on and so forth. Point taken. I do want to say a couple things, though, in response. Number one, while Taylor absolutely brings a lot of her people back to her tours, the Eras Tour was the biggest production she had ever put on, as she said many times as well. And so a lot of the people that worked on that tour, she had not worked with before. Case in point, her choreographer, Mandy Moore, she had never worked with her before, right? Many of the dancers, this was their first time working with Taylor. Turning that entire stage into an LED screen, a flat screen, undoubtedly took more engineers than she has used on prior tours, right? So yes, Taylor brings a lot of the same people around her, but let's not get it twisted. She had to work with a whole lot of people she has never worked with too. I would bet a lot of money on that. And so I say that to say, my guess is she found herself in just as many scenarios as Beyoncé did with Renaissance, wherein she had to rely on the expertise of people she had not worked with before, which was the case with Beyoncé in this particular scene, in this particular camera lens. Not every single engineer, tech person, camera person that Beyoncé has ever worked with is going to be on every single tour. First of all, a lot of these people who work on these tours, they gotta take other work other than just working with Beyonce and just working with Taylor. Taylor tours what, every few years? Okay, so these people aren't working every few years, right? They gotta eat, so they might not even be available the next time Taylor goes on tour. So, which is simply to say, I don't want us to kid ourselves into thinking that every single person who was on Eras Tour is someone Taylor had worked with before. They absolutely were not. Nor do I think there's any reason for us to assume that Beyoncé wouldn't be just as loyal to the people that she's worked with, who she found were really high quality, high value people. Like, I don't know any business person. I don't know any leader. I don't know any CEO who doesn't do their damnedest to bring the best people along with them everywhere they go. When my company, Minted Cosmetics, got acquired, one of the first things I did was reach out to some of my top employees pre-acquisition and ask them to come with me over to Minted 2.0. That was like, that might have been the second thing I did. Okay. Because when you know people are good, you hold on to them. That's not even like a business secret. Like, a lot of people said this in my comment section, like Taylor figured out some amazing secret. No shade at all to Taylor. She's a brilliant businesswoman. That's not a business secret. Okay. Anybody who's ever worked with anybody who did a thing really well has had the thought, when I go do the next thing, I hope if they can't come with me, I find someone just like them. So there's no reason to think Beyonce wouldn't think the same thing. So you're kind of pointing it out as a difference. And what I'm saying to you is I doubt it's a difference. Now, do I want to say this? Do I want to say? I don't want to say it. I'm going to say something, and please just know, whenever I say anything, I am never trying to shade these two women. Ever, ever, ever. But I will say, I do think it's possible if we're going to put on the table that it is a possibility that Taylor experiences less friction because she brings more of her people with her from tour to tour. And I'm sure that is a possibility. I think I see that. And what I will raise you is that I think Beyoncé could be a bit more of a perfectionist and could weed a few more people out from show to show, because what she considers good enough might be different from what Taylor considers good enough on certain specific things. That's just another hypothesis, okay? That's just another hypothesis. Ooh, I just have to steel myself for the comments. Oh my God. The reason I say it, and I say it with love, when it comes to Taylor Swift's fashions, when it comes to Taylor Swift's fashions, I do find them to be interesting, is a word I might use. Slightly, I'm trying so hard, y'all. Let me just be real. I don't think her fashion's always fashion right, okay? I just don't. And including on Eras Tour, there were so many moments where I was like, this is the outfit on the biggest tour in the world. These dresses, there were so many moments like that. Oh, why are y'all doing my girl this way? And then I found out via the Eras Tour docu-series, she has been with the same stylist for umpteen years. That to me says, yes, she's loyal. Yes, she is bringing these people on, bringing them through tour to tour to tour. But should we maybe have culled some of the staff, some of the team? Maybe. That's just me based on how I perceive her fashion. Some of you maybe loved every wardrobe choice. I found a lot of the wardrobe choices in Eras to be frankly confusing. She is such a beautiful girl. Some of those dresses, and really, I think we have to call them frocks. Some of them, ooh, Lord. So my point is simply, maybe she is more loyal, and maybe she should be a little bit less loyal. And maybe Beyoncé is less loyal because Beyoncé is always trying to clear a even higher bar. And you cannot look at the fashions on Renaissance World Tour and tell me anything different as it relates to fashion, because those fashions, I think, were the best fashions I have ever seen on a tour. The only thing rivaling it is Cowboy Carter. The woman knows fashion, and she knows how to pick stylists and designers who will make sure that every time she steps up on that stage, she looks like better than the runway, truly better than the runway. I watched so many videos where they would do side-by-sides of the person who wore on the runway, whatever the little dress was, and then Beyoncé. I would be embarrassed to wear it on the runway. I'd be like, if Beyonce's going to be in it, don't put me in it, because I don't want to be side-by-side. I don't want anybody doing a side-by-side with me and Beyonce. Truly. Anyway, that's just another point I'm making. I'm just seeing your point and making my own point, but we can exist together without hating one another here, because we all love both of them. Okay? Point for point, just point for point. Let's get to another comment. Oh, now this is an interesting one from MEP Matthews, or MEP Matthews. They say, I am sure race did have something to do with the difference between their tours, but I also think they create different atmospheres. Beyoncé drives such an aura of perfectionism and tries to constantly make a brilliant point. And Taylor was going for escapism and wanted to bring girlhood to stage. I think those are two different environments and mindsets. Okay, you know what? MEP Matthews, I see what you're saying here. And I think it actually kind of touches on a little bit of what I just said. I do think Beyoncé is an extreme perfectionist. And the reason I think that is because she has said that. And I think Taylor, the vibe I got from Taylor in the docuseries is that she is a perfection seeker as it relates to her songwriting, but as it relates to the show she was looking to put on, I mean, there were even times where she said, like, I'm okay with someone pulling focus. I'm okay if not everything is looking the exact same on stage. Like, it seemed like she was a bit more interested in the whimsy of the show, creating a whimsical show. And I do think Beyonce, I don't know if whimsy is a word I've ever used to describe Beyonce, to be frank. She is a perfectionist, self-proclaimed, and I can see that creating two different mindsets. Now, what would that mean as it relates to needing something from someone you are hiring? You're paying them money to do this thing for you, and how they react to you, what they say to you in terms of saying, yes, it's possible. No, it's not possible. Yes, I'll figure it out. No, I won't figure it out. To me, whether you're creating a whimsical environment or a perfectionist environment, the people you hire to do a job should do that job and should not complain or try to make it seem as though this job can't be done when it very clearly can. Like, to me, the fact that she was told something couldn't happen and then it could happen, that means you were being lazy. Now, I don't know why you're being lazy with Beyonce or why you would be lazy with Taylor. I shouldn't be lazy with anyone. Again, whether it's a whimsical environment or not. But what I would agree with you that I do think the environment was different. I agree with that. It certainly seems that way. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay for different leaders and different types of leaders to create different environments, to approach things differently. Like, I don't think one is necessarily better or worse than the other. I do think, regardless of the environment being set, if someone's being paid to do a job, you should be able to expect them to do that job. And this particular person failed. And I'll tell you what, that man who continued to tell her no, I bet he is so thankful that Beyonce has not put Renaissance on streaming, so we can't all watch it over and over and cuss him clean out in our minds over and over again. If one day she does put it on streaming, I bet he might be the only person not happy about it. Truly. Okay, this next comment is another one that a number of people have raised. Lisa Gallagos says, doesn't Taylor also have her parents be the quote bad guys? That's what I would do if I could. Okay, so a number of people in my comment section raised this point that, and I've read this as well, although I don't remember where. Rumor has it that Taylor lets her mom, her dad, her brother really be the conflict dealer with hers. That's not a word. She allows them to be the people who manage the conflict. She doesn't want to be the person saying no or saying this isn't good enough or saying go back and do it again. She outsources that to her team, most notably her family. Again, this is a rumor. If you know that like these words came out of Taylor's mouth at some point, let me know. I don't think I recall that. I have seen this somewhere before. Okay. And since I don't know for a fact if it's true, I'm not just going to assume that's true. However, again, this is a different leadership management style. And I would say if this is true about Taylor, it's actually something. There are two ways to interpret this, right? One is because Taylor is the boss, the CEO, managing hundreds and hundreds of employees, particularly when she's on tour, she literally can't be the person dealing with every conflict. Like she quite literally cannot always be that person. That's true of Beyonce too, right? So you do have to delegate. There will always be some number of people who have to, like, it can't all come from you, okay? But let's take that to the side. What this person is saying and what I've seen other people say is that specifically, even when it could and you might think would be Taylor delivering the message that this isn't the thing I want, this wasn't done well, change this, do that, she oftentimes is making a conscious decision to not be the person delivering that message so that she kind of retains her reputation as not necessarily just being the nice one, but so that she doesn't have to like get her hands dirty with that. And again, I don't know if it's true, but I will say in some ways, if it is true, I admire that. I admire her discipline in that. I think it takes a lot of discipline to be upset about something or to want something done a different way and to say to yourself, it is going to be better for me, better for my goals, my objectives in the long run if this message isn't coming from me, because there is something that I'm looking to retain as it relates to my communication style with my team that I will lose if too much of that conflict communication is coming from me. So I'm going to let these people do it. I'm going to delegate it to these people. I think that takes an incredible amount of discipline. And I do believe Taylor is a very disciplined person, 100%. So a part of me very much admires that. I will say, as much as I admire it, it is not something I think I could ever emulate. And I could understand if Beyoncé were the same way. You know, it makes me think of Game of Thrones. And there's this quote, I do believe it's in the very first episode of Game of Thrones, okay? And I'm going to butcher the quote. But basically, old boy who's the head of the Snows, not the Snows, what's their name? Who AI has come to the rescue, y'all, because I was like, now what? Who said this? I know his name. I haven't watched Game of Thrones in so long. Here it is. And AI, see, when you Google something, I feel like sometimes the AI overview is like kind of mocking you. Because I wrote, here was my prompt: Game of Thrones, quote, about the king carries out the execution. Y'all, that is not even a sentence. Okay, and the AI overview is, the quote you're looking for is a core philosophy of House Stark, most famously stated by Eddard Stark. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Yes, that's a good ass quote. I'm gonna write that down somewhere. But the point being, if I'm the person putting you in this position, I should be the person delivering the message. And I kind of buy that. It's the same way, like every person I've ever terminated, I've terminated. I haven't made someone else go do it. I don't like doing it. I don't enjoy doing it, but like, heavy is the head, right, that wears the crown, or the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. I do kind of vibe with that philosophy. And so I could understand if Beyonce did as well. I understand also wanting to keep your hands clean. I get that. Again, I think it takes great discipline. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm simply saying where I think I fall as a leader is, if there is something that I am expecting of you and you aren't delivering on it, I actually think it's important that that message comes from me, partially because I do think it helps you better understand like what my frame of thinking is, why this is important to me. Hopefully I'm not just saying to you, I don't like it, do it differently. Hopefully I'm explaining to you, here's why this isn't working for me. And it is something I think I have worked very hard to get better at as a leader, to not just say, I don't like it, do it better, but to give very clear feedback and very clear reasoning as to why this thing needs to change. You know, I think back to this holiday season. Of course, as a beauty brand owner, any brand owner during the holiday season, everything gets a sharper look, right? And so I was working with my team on the design for our websites as we headed into November, as we headed into Black Friday. And I was looking at our banner designs. And at one point I could feel myself getting frustrated. And they showed me a banner and I just was like, oh boy, you know, and then I had to pull myself together, because I was like, that's not helpful. It's not helpful to just like show them that you're frustrated by the design of this banner. What is helpful is if you can say to them, here's what I need. This banner is just telling me that we're on sale. I need to feel some excitement, some warmth. I need the design to kind of like jump off the screen a little bit. Like I needed to scream, hey, it's Christmas and we're happy about it, not just Black Friday sale now, you know? And so I told them elements that I think would help accomplish that. Let's bring up the glow on the text around it. Let's bring in some of these ornamental designs that we've used in other places, like give it the festivity so that it doesn't just read as sale now, right? But I had to kind of coach myself in the moment because my immediate reaction was, oh my God. If y'all had seen the first draft, you'd understand. But the point is, this is something I've had to train myself to do and train myself to get better at. I am better at it than I used to be. I'm still not perfect at it, but it's something that's important to me because if I'm going to be a leader, people need to be able to understand why I'm saying certain things need to happen a certain way. And so I feel like that's not going to happen as much if I'm always outsourcing. And again, I'm not saying Taylor is always outsourcing. I'm sort of saying to the extent that it is happening, I admire her discipline and I can understand why that is something that would be important to her. I have a different I have a different philosophy around it. I get the sense Beyonce does too. And I don't think one is better than the other. I just think it depends on like what it is you're trying to accomplish as a leader. This next comment is one I want to read because it came up a few times as well. Marie M3LB. Marie says, there is an intersectionality of race and misogyny for Beyonce that is not there for Taylor, obviously. While Taylor does sing about misogyny, she seems to shy away from showing any controversy or conflict. This was a comment, a similar comment was made over on TikTok. Basically that Taylor seems to be deciding not to show conflict, right? And this is a narrative choice. And a few people made a similar comment that like it could just be what these two artists decided to show us, not indicative of what was actually happening. And that is a very interesting point to me because it points to a whole nother thing that I think, could be different about these two women, but also different as we think about their management and leadership styles. Now, what I will say about Taylor is I do think, and we spoke about this a bit on the last episode, I do think her goal with this docuseries was not to give an in-depth expose on everything that happens while going on tour. All right, because if we were going to get an in-depth expose, we would have heard about Maddie Healy. And we didn't hear not one peep about that man. She said she spent 8 seconds saying, I went through 2 breakups. And that's a lot of breakups. That is what she gave that man. However, as we know, because we got songs about it, that shit fucked her up for at least a little bit while she was on tour. So if what she wanted to give us was an in-depth expose, it would have been a whole nother thing that we did not get. So I do think the goal of this, it was more heartfelt, it was more heartwarming. And again, to be clear, I very much enjoyed it. Where I will say every documentary I've ever seen from Beyonce, and keep in mind, Beyonce oftentimes is listed as the director of her documentaries. She wants to see the grit. She wants us to see not just it all looking perfect at the end. She wants us to see the pain and determination and arguments it took to get there. She even showed us an argument with her daughter, Blue Ivy, where Blue was coming in real hot, talking about, Mom, you can't take Diva out the set list. No. And Beyonce was like, Blue, relax. Like, this is my show. Mind you, she kept Diva in the show because, as we all know, Blue is her manager. But the point is, she wants us to see the conflict in a way it seems like simply was not Taylor's goal with End of an Era. And I think that is okay. A number of people have pointed out, though, that we saw more conflict in Miss Americana. And of course, we hear plenty of conflict and sort of the results of conflict from Taylor's music. So I don't think that Taylor just generally as a person does not want people to know about conflict in her life. I think she very much wants people to know. She wrote an entire, was it Tumblr article about when they sold her masters from under her and brought us all on a journey to buy Taylor's versions. Like, she wants us to know about the conflict. I think it just wasn't the goal of this particular docuseries. And I think that's okay. But do I think there is a point when it comes to how much conflict Beyonce has chosen to share with us in her documentaries. Do I think this is her saying, I want you all to know that it's not just that I'm a brilliant artist with an amazing voice and a stupidly beautiful body and so on and so forth. It's not just that I am absurdly talented. I'm also back here fighting with my literal family members to bring you the best show possible. I think it's important to her for us to see that in a way that maybe it is not always as important to Taylor for us to see that like maybe is not just always a part of her goal. And I think that's okay. And I think it is a narrative choice to a certain extent, and I can understand why both choices would be made. And with that, I'm now going to turn my attention to a few comments from TikTok. Also, I was wrong before. We are at 81,000 views over on TikTok and 432 comments. Obviously, I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to just cherry pick a few if I haven't touched on them already from YouTube. I'm going to start with a lighthearted one from It's Alice in Wonderland. She said Beyonce had to Google wide lenses and tracks on her own internet. Yes, Alice in Wonderland. That is my point exactly. How is Beyonce on Beyonce's internet Googling camera lenses because these men, not always men, but always a man. Super quick pause to interject with the fact that the postman just knocked on my door with a package. And guess what the package is? A wig. It's a wig, y'all. My wig era is starting very soon. The next time you see me on this very podcast, I will have on some kind of wig. I've ordered so many because I'm scared that they'll all look crazy. I think this wig that just got delivered is like my fifth or sixth wig. I'm not going to know what I'm doing and it might look busted, but that is a quick personal aside. Your girl's wig just arrived. Let's get back to the comments. All right, so I'm going to dive into a comment and response because I find both interesting. All right, so this first comment is from Salty Stitcher. They say, I would never dismiss the idea that microaggressions are the main driver of that. That's clearly the most likely answer, but I also get the sense that Taylor and her team place a very high value on collaboration with their team members and might seek out people with a more collaborative mindset. Not that Beyonce doesn't value collaboration, but I'm not sure it's a driving factor the way it seems to be with Taylor. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with that, just different approaches to a similar process. Okay, and then Woomy replies, I've seen this kind of comment multiple times now, and it's interesting because Beyonce is known and even criticized for how much collaboration she does. Her entire artistic process is communal, from her references to writing to performances. The difference between them is not exactly that. It's more that Beyonce does a lot more collaborative projects than Taylor. Taylor's music in general has been consistent, and while interesting, they exist in the same realm, which makes recreation with the same team, quote unquote, easier. Beyonce's projects are all wildly different, genres, references, etc. She pushes the boundaries of innovation every single time and deliberately collaborates with people already in those spaces, which is very difficult to do. But she still definitely has her long-term people that have evolved with her over time. Okay, many good points here. Salty Stitcher and Woomy. Many great points. I will say, is there some discourse more so over in TikTok that has veered into disrespecting both artists? Yes, it's TikTok. What do you expect? But is there also still some really interesting intellectual debate happening? Yes. And I pride myself on that. It starts at the top. I'm joking. Okay. But the interesting point that I think Salty Stitcher makes to me is this idea of collaboration as it relates to the vision for the tour and whether or not Taylor is more or less collaborative than Beyonce on that. And I don't know the answer, but I will say I too got the impression from these documentaries that Taylor is a bit more collaborative as it relates to her vision. Now, to be clear, there are people in my comment section arguing the exact opposite, saying like Taylor comes to the table knowing exactly what she wants and all everyone else has to do is execute the vision because her vision is so clearly mapped out. I don't know that that's the sense that I got watching the docuseries. The sense I got is yes, she has a vision. She's not coming to the table with a blank slate. She came with the vision for Eras Tour, but then worked to bring on people like Mandy Moore to bring that vision to life and to collaborate with her on what the vision could and would be. And the sense I get with Beyonce, and there are so many people who have spoken about collaborating with Beyonce, is that she is bringing, she is collaborating. She's extremely collaborative. I think she's actually better at collaborating than pretty much anyone else in the business. And I think if you just look at all the different types of people she has collaborated with to create absolute masterpieces, you'd probably conclude that too. She is extremely collaborative, but it does seem to me that her vision is her vision, and she is going to make sure that when you are stepping into it, you are mapping to her vision. Right? Like she wants you to bring what you bring to her vision. I do get that sense. But it is a sense, and I could be wrong. And there are very much people, again, like I said in my comment section, arguing that Taylor does that. She comes with the whole vision, and all you have to do is step up and execute. So I don't exactly know, but I think that's an interesting point. But I will say the reason I really appreciated what Wumi said in response is Beyonce has gotten a lot of heat over the years for how collaborative she is. Every time someone was like, oh, Beyonce has 15 writers on a song. First of all, you don't know a lot about music, clearly, if you say something like that. But second of all, Beyonce is extremely collaborative. Like she wants it, when she hears The Weeknd, when she hears Frank Ocean, when she hears Ray, when she hears Miley Cyrus, when she hears Post Malone, when she hears Jack White, she hears, oh, this is someone I'm grabbing inspiration from and who can come and add into this album, this song, these lyrics, this vibe in a way that is going to take it off the page and make it just so magical. And that is extremely hard to do. If you've ever worked on a group project, you know how hard it is to do. It's extremely hard to do. And there are people who hate on her for that. And I'll never understand why. Like, you not being able to understand how much of a skill set it is to take so many disparate people, sounds, groups, genres, and make them sound cohesive and amazing. You not understanding how amazing that is really speaks to your intellect or lack thereof. It certainly doesn't say anything bad about Beyonce. So I appreciate Wumi bringing up that point. We know she is collaborative, but do I think she's collaborative in a different way than Taylor? Yeah. Which is why I'm so fascinated by both of them. I really am fascinated by both of them. This comment from Larissa and Aviana says, with End of an Era, there were a couple moments where some of her band questioned the number of songs and stuff like that, but they kept it to themselves. Then Taylor proved it would work. I clocked that as people trusted Taylor even if they couldn't see the vision. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that probably happens for both of them. Listen, I don't think Beyonce is getting on tour and everything she says or does, people are pushing back on her. People are trying to keep a job, okay? You get a job on tour with Beyonce. I think most of those people are trying to keep that job. So I don't think every moment on tour is her getting pushback from every person. However, and so I say that to say, I think there are probably people who looked at her too when she said, I want to open up the tour with the national anthem, which is how she opens up Cowboy Carter. Okay. She gives us American Requiem into the national anthem. Gagged. I'm sure somebody thought to themselves, the national anthem. I don't know, B. And they kept that thought right onto themselves. And let me tell you, it was brilliant. Cried tears immediately brought to tears. The point is, yes, I think that is true for Taylor. I think that's probably true for Beyonce as well. I think a lot of the people they work with very much trust their vision. I don't know how you could look at a Beyonce in the face and be like, no, I don't trust anything you're saying. I don't trust anything you're saying, B. 30 tours later. No. Now, there is a point that has been raised more so in my TikTok comments. I'm going to address it here. I don't even know if I can find like someone specific who raised it, but basically this idea that like Taylor isn't getting as much pushback, and it shows. That is a point people have made, and I think the people making that point are just trying to be rude. But I have seen Swifties make similar points, most notably Swiftologist, right? And I've talked about him before on this show. One of the points he made about Life of a Showgirl, and I disagreed with almost everything he said about Life of a Showgirl, because he didn't really like the album, and I think it's a fantastic pop album. But one of the points I recall him making was that it didn't seem like there were enough people telling her no, or when they would try, she wouldn't really hear it, right? Like she kind of needed more people in the room, or different people in the room, or just to listen to the people in the room. Like I think he made a point about like Max Martin, basically being like, "Oh, girl, I don't know about this," in one of the voice memos. I don't know. The point is, it's a point other people have made that, particularly as it relates to Life of a Showgirl, there should have been more pushback, and Taylor should have listened to the pushback, and then maybe we would have gotten a better album. That is a point people have made. It is not a point I am making, because again, I really enjoyed Life of a Showgirl. I enjoy it for what it is, which in my opinion is a fantastic pop album. It is not more than that. It is not less than that. I think it's a fantastic pop album. And I think it delivered on its promise and what Taylor told us it was going to be, which is like fantastic earworms, so on and so forth. But, let me get back to this. There is something to be said for pushback. There is something to be said for putting people around you who will push back. There is something to be said, particularly because so many people have raised in my comments that like, oh, the reason Taylor isn't getting the pushback is because she's been touring with the same people for years and years and years. I think there's something to be said for bringing people on the tour who will push back. Yeah. Not in this particular instance, okay? In this particular instance with Beyonce and the Camerlins, oh boy, should have just found the Camerlins, all right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying in general, I have seen it happen, and I am not saying this is what's happening with Taylor, but I have seen it happen on many occasions where leaders get to a point where they don't listen to pushback because they assume they're the smartest person in the room. Again, I don't think that's Taylor. I really, really don't. There are other people who would make that point. I'm not one of those people. As she said herself, she's a feedback guy. I'm a feedback guy. And so, but I'll just take the point that's been made and made somewhat rudely over on TikTok and make it far less rudely and just say, I do think there's something to be said for continuing to bring people along, including new people who are going to push you, who are going to say, and this is one of the reasons I said I wanted her to work with people other than Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner on the next album. And I was happy she did. And I was happy she worked with Max Martin. I felt like we needed new energy. I felt like we needed people who were going to push Taylor to do something different, not because there's anything wrong with what she delivered with her last several albums, just because I think it is worth being pushed. I like being pushed. It might not always feel comfortable in the moment, but usually after the fact, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy that happened. I'm happy that happened. I have grown, I've learned. And so, to the people saying it on TikTok, even though some of y'all are just trying to be rude, I think there is something to be said for continuing to put people around you who will push you, who won't just say, yes, I'm going to do it exactly the way you said you wanted it done. I'm going to say, but what about this? I don't know if that'll work. What if we did that? It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act because, oh boy, who was pushing back on Beyonce shouldn't have been doing that. But some of the pushback she got, like from Blue, her manager, when Blue said, don't cut Diva, she listened. All right, I took another quick scroll through the 432 comments. I think I'm going to leave it there with TikTok because things evolved a little bit, but still there's a lot of good debate and discourse happening there. I love the discourse. You guys know I love bringing it here and sort of digging into it. Obviously, percentage-wise, I read a lot more from YouTube when it's there. So if having your comment read on an episode is something that appeals to you, I leave it over on YouTube. I even read the long ones, as many of you know. But I just want to thank you for continuing to engage, for being a part of the discussion. It's interesting to me, and clearly it's interesting to some of you. Woo, Lord in heaven, Jesus. I have been recording for over an hour, and we just made it through the comments. But I do want to talk a little bit about this Ashley Tisdale article. In case you missed it, the name of the article is Breaking Up with My Toxic Mom Group. Subtitle, I thought I found my village. Instead, I was back in high school. Now, I don't know exactly what possessed Ashley Tisdale to write this and put it over on The Cut. Like, I guess she's a writer now. I don't know, but I did see a lot of takes about it on the internet, and so I read it. And here's what I will say before I pull out a few choice quotes. As I think back to becoming a mom, and like Ashley Tisdale, I became a mom during the pandemic. So I got pregnant July of 2020. I had my daughter March of 2021. I remember I got my COVID vaccine while pregnant. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before I gave birth, if that, because the vaccine had just become really, truly available. And I was in one of the early groups because I was pregnant. I was considered like high risk, and I was able to get it before, my husband and most people I knew. It was a fraught time. My baby shower was virtual. I interacted with very few people while I was pregnant, pretty much my husband. My husband did not get to come with me to any of my doctor's appointments to do the ultrasounds. Oh my God. Am I going to cry? This has to stop. Sometimes when I think about my husband not being there at the doctor's appointments, he was on FaceTime with me. But I'm like, wow, that is really something I missed out on. Like, that's a thing that dads get to do and we didn't get to do. It was a fraught time. And at the time we were living in Philadelphia, and we didn't know very many people in Philadelphia. We ended up in Philly because we didn't want to be in New York City anymore. That's the truth. We lived in New York, in Harlem for about a decade, then realized we don't want to live here anymore. The rent is too damn high. Where can we actually afford to buy a place? And the answer was either Jersey or Philly. And we didn't like Jersey. Plain and simple. So we moved to Philly. And I will always have love in my heart for Philly. It's where my daughter was born. We lived there for 5 years. I think Philly is fantastic. However, we really were only there because we didn't want to be in New York. Like, it's not like we looked on a map of all of our favorite places and decided it was Philly. And as a result, we also didn't have any real community in Philly. So it's a pandemic. I don't have any family there. I don't have many friends there. I had one close friend there, but also it's a pandemic, so I'm barely seeing her. It was very isolating. And I recall after my daughter was born, feeling very isolated and wanting community and trying to figure it out. And I remember I joined a book club that my neighbor who had a daughter invited me to be a part of. And my neighbor was very nice. We didn't see each other that often, but on one of the times we saw each other, she said, "Hey, I have a book club. You should join." And so I tried. I tried. And these women were very nice. Honestly, the reason it didn't work out was logistics more than anything else. But I remember just feeling like kind of lost at sea a little bit. Like, I'm trying to make it work. The thing I remember the most about this book club is, I think it was my second or third time meeting up with them. And one of them was hosting, instead of like our usual book club thing, was hosting like a movie thing and at her house. And I went, but I brought my daughter, who would have been at that time, I don't know, 9 months old, so still very, very young. I brought my daughter. I get to the house. It's like raining. So I'm trying to, like, as I'm walking, because, Philly, no, everyone's parking on the street. I'm parked on the street. I'm trying to walk down the sidewalk with my umbrella. I don't want to get wet. I don't want her to get wet. Then she lives in like a row house. Everybody in Philly almost lives in some sort of row house. Now I'm trying to get the stroller up the stairs. I'm trying to get her up the stairs. I'm trying to get the stroller up the stairs. I'm trying to figure out, do I leave the stroller outside or do I bring it into her little row house? Now it's wet. Okay. Just getting into the house. Also, she lived about 30 minutes away. Okay. So just getting there took so much energy. I get there. I have her. Now Kayla's crying. Okay, she's hungry. Okay, now I'm digging, trying to find something, trying to find a bottle. She has a bottle that keeps her occupied for 6 minutes. Now she's like crawling around, but obviously the house is not baby proof. This woman does not have a baby, so why would the house be baby proof? as it turns out, we never baby-proofed our house either. But we also didn't have sharp edges of death everywhere, which is what this house had. Okay, so now Kayla's crawling to her death, crying. She doesn't know anybody. Everything is scary to her. I'm trying to engage. I'm trying to talk to these women. I can't talk to these women. Kayla's crawling to her death. So I think I ended up staying for 18 minutes before I was like, well, it's been fun, y'all. They had to pause the movie. Obviously, how could anybody watch a movie when a baby's crawling to their death, crying because they want a bottle? I'm trying to bring in a wet stroller. Everything was chaos. I said, I have to leave. And I wanted it so bad. I was so bad. All I wanted was like friends in a pandemic. No. We left. And I recall like crying on the way home because I was just like, it's impossible. It's impossible. This is impossible. Okay. What does any of this have to do with Ashley? What does any of this have to do with Ashley Tisdale? I guess I read this article and I related to her saying like she just wanted to find her people. I related to that. Now, after she released this article, some internet sleuths, including our good friend Erica Manganelli, posted about exactly who this mom group is, because there are these pictures online of her hanging out with other mom friends, including Meghan Trainor and Mandy Moore. So now Ashley Tisdale's publicist has had to come out and say like she wasn't referring to Meghan Trainor and Mandy Moore. Who knows if she was or wasn't, but I think this spiraled in a way that maybe she didn't participate. Let me just read a little bit of what she wrote here. After the birth of my first daughter, I was craving connection with other mothers. I needed someone to talk to about which diaper bag to buy, whether a snoo is worth it, and how you can possibly get anything done if you're supposed to sleep while the baby is sleeping. But what started out logistical soon became deeply personal. I needed to talk to someone else who related to what I was going through, the mood swings, the late nights, saying goodbye to who I used to be, and getting to know my daughter and the new person I was becoming. So I felt lucky when my friend brought together a group of new moms that she knew. My friends' friends were in the same situation as I was. Most of us had been pregnant through the early pandemic, so we missed out on the activities where you meet other expectant mothers. We hadn't had baby showers or prenatal yoga, and hardly anyone had held our newborns. But finally, we were able to be together, and our kids were able to be together, and it all felt right. Okay, so that intro, again, I relate to that. I relate to this idea of like finding a group. Now, my group was a book club and it wasn't really all about babies, but it still to me felt like, yay, I found this group or whatever. I relate to that. But then she gets to sort of the falling out. And basically what she describes is that she started being like left out of group hangs and group gatherings, and it all started to feel very high school. She writes, I remember being left out of a couple of group hangs, and I knew about them because Instagram made sure it fed me every single photo and Instagram story. Another time at one of the mom's dinner parties, I realized where I sat with her, which was at the end of the table, far from the rest of the women. I was starting to feel frozen out of the group, noticing every way that they seemed to exclude me. She goes on from there. I will say what I kind of took from this second part of the article. So for me, I related to this article in two different ways. The first part being really trying to figure out like who are going to be my people in this new phase of my life. And I tried to figure it out and I was wrong about that particular group through no fault of their own. Okay. It wasn't meant to be. But then the second part where she describes the group friend breakup, I've, like I think most women my age, I've experienced a friendship breakup or two, and it's devastating. It's devastating. Oh God, it's devastating. It's kind of the only breakup I do experience these days. You know, knock on wood. My husband still loves me. So the only breakups I experience these days are friendship breakups, and they are devastating. And I very much understand her perspective here that like, instead of continuing to try to force it, I said, this is too high school for me. I'm going to walk away. And it just made me think about this idea that like things are for seasons. You know, it sounds like if you go and read this full article, this group arrived at a good time for her, served a purpose for her, and then when that purpose was no longer being served, she walked away. And sometimes those things can feel really devastating, but everything has its season, right? And I think that was kind of my big takeaway here from this article. Like, there will be things that come into your life and they're meant to be there for the time they're meant to be there, and then they're not meant to be there anymore. And it doesn't mean it's not devastating. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when I think about the friendship breakups that I've had. And sometimes those breakups turn more into fractures, and we're still okay and we're still cordial, but we aren't what we were. And it's because it was meant to be what it was meant to be for that time. And that is okay. And it's one of those lessons I'm still having to remind myself of, because sometimes I think about those friendships and what they used to be and how sometimes I miss them. But like, we are where we're supposed to be. Like, our lives have shifted, they have changed. There kind of would not even be a way logistically to make them fit the way they used to fit together. Yes, it hurts, but it also is like, I don't know, part of growing up is a thing that I just sometimes have to remind myself of. So those were my takeaways from that article. I encourage you to read it. And with that, we're going to end on Black news. And the Black news is about Doechii. Let me say this about Doechii. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In my mind, she is Beyonce's heir apparent as it relates to live performances. I've yet to see anybody else coming close to putting on a live performance as captivating as Doechii. Oh God. And I say this as someone who is not, I don't know that I could really call myself a Doechii fan, because like, I don't stream her music. Have I streamed a song or two? Sure. But like, I don't listen to rap like that. She's an incredibly talented rapper. It's just not my chosen genre to just like listen to. So I'm not really streaming her music like that. Every song of hers I've heard, I've thought, damn, she's good at what she does. And every live performance of her I've seen, I've thought, damn, she is really good at what she does. Okay. That's my context for Doechii. She recently put out a song called Girl Get Up with SZA. And in the song, she addresses the people who have called her an industry plant. Honestly, I hate that term. What does it even mean? If the industry were that good at quote unquote planting people, I feel like you'd have more of these record labels with hit stars. If they were that good at it, they're not that good at it. So I think the people really out here doing big shit, particularly when you can see their talent with your own two eyes, it's probably that they're talented. That's probably what's happening. Anyway, she addresses it. Let's look at some of the lyrics. All right. She says, all that industry plant shit whack. I see it on the blogs. I see you in the chats. You suck every rap dick from the back. But what's the agenda when the it girl Black? Y'all can't fathom that I worked this hard, and y'all can't fathom that I earned this chart. Y'all can't stand my vibe because I'm anointed. All y'all evil ass hoes just annoying. Great. Fantastic. Wonderful. Obviously done far better by her than by me. I didn't want to just speak it to you. I wanted to give it to you, a little bit of a vibe. The point is, she names not a single person. Okay. Not one person. She's just saying to everybody who accused me of being an industry plant, I have smoke for you. Well, some dumb Twitch streamer, I guess is his job, named Aiden Ross, took it upon himself to decide that she was specifically dissing him. And I just want you to know, Doechii strikes me as someone who, if she wants to deliver a hit to you specifically, she'll say you specifically. So I think she really was talking to generally the people who have doubted her. Because why doubt her when she's so clearly good at doing what she's doing? Anyway, he decided it was about him, and he has taken to the internet to call her a bitch, to call her bullshit, to call her ugly, to call her stupid. He has gone in. I should tell you, this is a white man. I think it's relevant. You might not. This is also a white man who has had many, many things to say about Megan Thee Stallion and called her a bitch and everything but a child of God. Here's what I would like to say. First of all, I'm mad I know who this person is. I'm very mad about it. Very mad about it. I wish I didn't. He does not seem worth my time, energy, or words in any way. But he's going to get them now, because I just want to make it clear it is my hope that he meets his downfall this year. That's my hope. That's my simple hope. And that is my Black news. I hope the Blacks rise up and delivered to him his downfall in the form of fewer streams, because I guess that's what he does. I don't really know Twitch, nor do I care to know. Fewer streams, if that's what matters, fewer brand deals or none at all, fewer viewers, less attention, whatever it is that feeds him, may it leave him. That's my wish, okay? And that is my Black news, because you've said one too many things about one too many Black women, and I hope you meet your downfall. And that's all I have to say about that. And we've done it, y'all. We've made it to the end of an episode. I want to thank you again for all of your comments, all of your discourse, all of your engagement. You know I love to see it. And I'm in the comments replying. So continue to do it. And definitely subscribe to the Patreon, because like I said, I'll be reviewing Olivia Dean's album. And I'll see you next week. Until next time.